Good morning. I will have the privilege to moderate this fireside chat, and I have the pleasure to welcome my special guests. I have Bill Collins, Group CFO at Clariant, and I have Reto Sahli, CIO at HAVI.
Do you want to?
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hi, Bill.
Maria.
Hi, Reto.
Hello.
So, I think before we dive into a spicy discussion, I mean, we're all aware of GBS being on a growth path and also taking a more prominent role on the agenda of the CEO. We see leaders preparing to leapfrog to the next wave of GBS, pivoting towards experiences for end-to-end services. Why is experience so important? It's driving adoption, and it's stimulating appetite for more services to be delivered by the GBS. And I know, Bill, you're a CFO. Maybe you're less keen to focus on experience because dollars are always difficult to bring together with experience. But dollars will come from the adoption, but also it's important because it stimulates appetite for more services to be, and more capabilities actually to be delivered by the GBS. And that's important because as we're going to talk about positioning GBS as an enabler of solution innovation and as an enabler and an accelerator of digital transformation engine, that adoption and the appetite to get more done actually fit very, very well. So, but before talking about how to position and how to brand GBS as an enabler for digital transformation, maybe I think it's good to confirm if the foundations are there. I'm very keen to maybe hear from you and from your experience. What are examples of foundations that you consider critical to have in place prior to exploring the opportunity to bring more to GBS, prior to maybe testing some bold ideas? Maybe, Bill, you want to start?
I can happily start. I think if you start with, if you go back 15, 20 years ago when GBS, well, my experience with shared services really started, it was really, on the transactional side, it was very much about the labor arbitrage. And one of the comments I loved yesterday was, well, on day one, it's about the cost. On day two, it's about the quality. And the quality comes from, I think, what you were saying in terms of the experience. So yes, as a CFO, I want to make sure that there is a return on the investment, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be short term. Because if we build the capabilities, we create trust within the organization that our shared services teams know what they're doing, they're adding value to the organization, they're collaborating with the rest of the organization, then that actually then sets the foundation for a much broader long-term return on investment that you then actually get, because at that point, I've seen anyway, shared services can really position itself as the leader in innovation, really having that singular view on a process across the company that actually allows us to say, how can we make this better? Where do we have the ability to put automation in? Where do we have the ability to really change things, to really re-envision how this works using technology and innovation? And I think that's really where the big payoff really comes. So not so much on the short term, but when you build these things and you build it well, I think you get the long-term investment that finance nerds like me are looking for.
Excellent. The view of a CIO, Reto.
Yeah, I think I would concur with Bill, so not being controversial at all. So I concur. So delivering results is the best convincing factor for GBS, and that starts probably more in the transactional area. And then with more and more trust coming along, obviously that allows GBS to build more capabilities, more like in the innovation side, and then going beyond the typical or traditional like GBS 1.0 scope.
And sticking to maybe solid foundations for a few more minutes, how do you measure actually the success, the performance of your GBS, and has your GBS delivered the promise to date?
It's going to seem like a cheeky answer, but the best proof point is the lack of escalations. So the less I hear from others talking about things that have gone wrong, I mean, the more it proves to me that things are going right. One of the best things I've heard basically in the course of the last year is I've spent some time in our shared service center in Mumbai, and the teams were telling me that teams across the world were now proactively pushing activity into them. Hey, you did a good job with this. Can you now also do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? So that really starts to tell me that the paradigm is changing, that there is trust developing between the teams in business services and the retained organization. So we're thinking through KPIs, and there's lots of great KPIs that you can put out there, but really for me one of the biggest ones is the word of mouth and the things that I'm hearing from the teams in terms of their increased levels of collaboration. And when you see that kind of collaboration and shared services solving problems for the businesses and the functions they support, that for me is gold. Excellent.
And Reto, what's the role of IT on that?
What's the role of IT in that? Interesting question, actually, but yeah. I think IT is going to help with the enlightenment of those processes. So GBS is running processes. The IT is helping with the enlightenment of those processes. So what are the KPIs? How are those processes working? How is the user experience landing? How are we measuring that? Because I mean, only what you can measure, you can performance improve, and I think that's the critical aspect of GBS, becoming Lean Six Sigma in a way, zero tolerance for failure, et cetera, and that's where IT can significantly help with enlightening those processes.
I really agree, because one of the things that I found really interesting about some comments yesterday was the focus on outcomes. And there's a lot of metrics that we can put in place. We can measure throughput, transactions, cost per transaction, all this good stuff that tells us whether we're doing a good job in certain areas. But the best proof point to the businesses and the functions that we support is really around the outcomes. Are we generating the outcomes that they're expecting? And I agree, IT is a phenomenal enabler that helps us be able to generate and look at those outcomes. Things that were just cool ideas 10 or 15 years ago, through the evolution of technology, we can actually do now. I was in India just a few weeks ago listening to really what other leading companies are doing, and they've pushed the boundaries so much further than I had expected that they had, simply because of the evolution of technology and that close link between shared services and IT to really make that happen.
And Reto, how would you expect from a GBS perspective, the capabilities being lined up to be able to team up with your team, with the IT experts, and define what is the full technology enablement of GBS first, but actually what is the type of technology that GBS will need to orchestrate to be able to enable the rest of the enterprise to accelerate the digital transformation.
Yeah, I think that brings us to the strategic alignment of like the overall strategy. This is not just the GBS strategy, the overall strategy with technology strategies. So technology being a key enabler for the business as a whole. I think it also then leads to the question of business process management and business process ownership, which in my view has to go across, so it cannot be siloed in GBS or retained. It needs to go across. And that collaboration then of technology with process owners and that strategic alignment is absolutely critical. So what are the problems that we need to solve with technology? But then in turn, also what can technology offer to unlock opportunities? So it's became a two-way street, not just this is the requirement for IT, this is the problem that you need to solve, but bottom up, this is what you can do with technology nowadays.
So there is collaboration at the base of defining an integrated scope. integrated architecture and integrated roadmap then to be executed together. And so we have seen very often a lot of investments being done by GBS or IT or eventually together, a lot of platforms, a lot of point solutions, without necessarily then having an outcome aligned to the expectations. Maybe any experience that you can share? Well, did you have that type of experience yourself? And any learnings maybe you can share from your experience on how to make sure that the return on investment is there?
Yeah, so definitely experienced that. And to be perfectly honest, I think, this territorial conversation, because it's territorial, it's nothing else in my mind, it's absolutely destructive. It's not making sense. Again, that strategic alignment and investing the money in the right place for the organization is absolutely critical. And I've also seen examples where it works very well, like at HAVI, for example, it works very well. So we have the right dialogue, GBS being the biggest customer of technology, internal customer, that alignment works perfectly well. We have a joint roadmap and we know exactly what we want to do and why we want to do, and at what cost or with what ROI we're going to do it.
Yeah, because I agree. The collaboration there is absolutely key, because if you get individual businesses, functions, shared services that are trying to develop a roadmap in isolation of what's happening in the rest of the company, I don't think it works as well, because you can put a brilliant solution together to a problem that isn't uniformly acknowledged within the company. So we had this issue a couple of years ago where we had some people in our GBS organization that were going to develop a customer portal, and then they hadn't had any conversations at all with the businesses about, well, what do we actually want to get out of this? What do we want that user experience to be for the customer? And it just completely unraveled because it becomes territorial. So if you start at the beginning with a clear roadmap, a clear understanding of what do we want to achieve together, then I think it really works together very, very well, because you've just got all the pieces that are firing on the same cylinders.
And so the global process owners play a pivotal role to that.
They do.
Now, we call them global process owners, but we talk about technology, and so we talk about solution, we talk about solution innovation here. Shall we maybe think of a different name? I mean, are these like global solution owners, global experience owners, global solution and experience owners? How do you see the role of the GPO evolving to enable the GBS role as digital transformation engine for the enterprise?
I think from my side, and coming back with what Reto said, the territoriality that can exist within the organization. Well, who are you to tell me how to run my process? And that's where I've seen it really be a struggle in a lot of companies. But I think if we really turn to look at what the capabilities and the sort of behavioral requirements are for our GPOs, just to use that phrase for right now, it really has to be someone that has a good understanding from a technical capability on what the end-to-end process should look like, but also somebody who has the interpersonal and collaboration skills to be able to coalesce opinion on that throughout the organization, so that when there is a change necessary in a specific process, it's one that a GPO can bring people together to say, you know what, if we make these changes, it's fundamentally better for us as a company, and taking that company view as opposed to, well, my business, my function, my whatever. So ownership is a very sort of politically charged word at times. So I agree. I think it's, if you've got a good one on the top of your head, I'd love to hear it. But I think it's something that words do matter. So I would fully support a change in titling.
Where the accountability starts and stops, so you know who to call, basically.
Yeah.
Reto?
I think the process owner model got a little disrupted with end-to-end processes, R2R, SDP, et cetera, like the SAP, ranging from the first SAP installations, I would say, because I think the more we are tapping into that digital space, and the more we are trying to leverage data and want to cause experiences, etc., and bring insight, I think the more we're going to cut through those different process areas. So I think it is about creating experience journeys then, which are cutting through the different process areas. So I think there needs to be an element of orchestration across those traditional process owner areas that allows that cutting through and really going end to end from an experience perspective versus from a traditional process perspective.
So there is a North Star basically to be defined first, based on the understanding of what the strategy of the enterprise and of each of the functions is. So the GPO will play that orchestrator role, will translate that into an end-to-end process strategy, solution North Star, collaborating with IT, and make sure that there is a targeted experience also agreed with the business, so the solution will then deliver or be implemented to deliver the targeted experience. And so governance, I think, becomes a crucial topic here, because who's going to do what? How do you define roles and responsibilities of GBS, of the GPOs, of the IT function, and then what stays within the business there? Because I guess there is also ownership there of policies and of targets that will remain within the functions. Maybe your view there on governance, Bill.
Well, we are a Swiss domiciled company, so we pay a lot of attention to what remains in Switzerland. So we basically define key decision-making, policy definition as being the activities that really need to be in Switzerland. But the thing is, I mean, again, coming back to the technology advancements that we've seen over the last decade, it's amazing to me just how much of the core activity can be done in a shared service center. I mean, there's companies that, for example, in finance, they're literally running 80% of global finance activity from one central location. So the evolution of technology, I think, really brings a lot of opportunity for us to rethink what is a retained role and what can be actually managed centrally. Yeah.
Your view, Reto?
Yeah, I would pretty much agree. So first and foremost, it depends on the maturity of your GBS organization and your technology organization, right? So different companies are at different points. I think the building of COEs and centralization of resources for technology, that has even happened before we started talking about GBS. So I think that's a given for labor arbitrage, for moving people closer together, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a concept which is in place anyways. So I do believe personally that strategic decision making should stay in the core, in the retained organization, and then service delivery, innovation, automation, etc., should be in a GBS type of or COE type of organization. That's what I personally believe.
And so this also means that if we look at the governance model, we need to make sure that there is a strategic layer of that governance. I mean, we see often GBS organizations have focused very much on defining the more tactical layer of that governance, and it becomes crucial then to define strategic objectives that GBS leadership together with the C-suite defines for then the GPOs and their entire team to execute. So sort of multi-tier type of governance.
The question then also is where the GPO is going to sit. Whether the GPO is going to sit in GBS or retained. So I've seen both models. You know, I mean, it's religion, right? What you believe in, right? But it can actually be in on both sides, right?
I mean, I do see clients which are focusing probably too much on where the GPOs have to sit in GBS, outside of GBS. I think discussing probably on what are the GPOs empowered to do, and what are the critical capabilities then to make impact is probably a topic of higher importance. And I've seen many models being in place. I think having a hybrid model is also a solution. I think what is important is to make sure that irrespective of where the GPOs are sitting, there is a sort of GPO committee on enterprise level that gets them together to define, to align on certain objectives, and also make sure that the way they operate, the way they execute is also fully aligned. And the capabilities, of course, have to be there. I mean, to your point, Bill, you mentioned the importance of trust. How do you build trust with the functions if
well, and if
your
actually,
GPOs are...
I mean, because this issue of reporting line, I mean, just annoys that out of me, because I really, and cynically so, see it as sort of a passive resistance mechanism to moving forward on some of these things. Because at the end of the day, whether it sits here or it sits here, our objective is how do we make it work? And to be honest, it can work here, it can work here. Where it reports is irrelevant. We have to focus on how we make this work. So you take a decision, and then you get the team focused on
what skills
how
they
do
bring,
we make
actually.
it work.
Excellent. So we discussed about the orchestration of technology that happens in GBS. I mean, there is a lot of technology needed to digitize GBS itself and to enable GBS to help digitizing the rest of the enterprise. Where IT sits, where do you need to have IT? Will that make the difference in the ability of GBS to enable and accelerate the digital transformation? Reto, maybe it's good to start with you on this one.
So my view is it doesn't really matter as long as it works, and then you kind of touched on it, right? So we need to make this work together. This is all one organization. This is not separate organizations, and I think you know it's a culture question. So I've seen both model work. I do believe that it's also a question of maturity of GBS. I've seen very mature GBS organizations where it absolutely made sense to have technology integrated into GBS. And I've seen others where it just didn't make sense because the capabilities were just in the retained or in the technology organization, and then never change a winning horse, right? Or don't change it when it's not ready to be changed, right? So it really can go either way. So it comes back to the territorial debate as well. Yeah. So it's not needed. It's absolutely not needed. And I never had this anymore in my life because, you know, together we have one plan, we have one vision, and that's what we ought to unlock, right?
Completely agree.
So if we look at all what we discussed, I mean, and this role GBS plays and the evolution of capabilities and the focus on solution innovation. So if you look forward, what type of skills, capabilities you need to have in GBS, starting from the leadership to make it happen? Who is the future head of GBS? What's the profile of the future head of GBS? To make sure that that role of innovator, of transformer, can be executed, is credible first, and can be executed successfully. Any view, Bill?
Well, I think with any senior leader position in an organization, the interpersonal side is critically important. Somebody who can listen well, somebody who can collaborate with the businesses and the functions that shared services supports is absolutely critical. In more evolved organizations, you won't get into as much of the territoriality issue, but you need to have somebody there who can sufficiently diffuse those territorial notions if they start to come up. But you also need a visionary. And where I've seen organizations get stuck before is, you know, we're in a good spot, so we're just going to keep doing what we do indefinitely. But the thing is, there is so much innovation that is happening within this space across the globe in so many different companies of all sizes that you really can learn a lot from each other, which is where I think that forums like this are really great because you can share some of those experiences. And when you see a company that is doing something that you hadn't thought of or you had thought of but didn't know the technology existed, that's critically important. And I think you need that kind of visionary in the role to be able to really drive and help the organization understand what good looks like, what could we be, and bring folks along on that. Because that's exciting, I think.
So visionary leadership, define the North Star, detail it out, and implement it. Reto.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more a general management role with the technology edge, to be perfectly honest. It all started in finance, so we have a lot of like finance professionals or CFOs, etc., like running GBS organizations. And I think dependent on the maturity of GBS, that makes total sense, as long as it's very transactional and very finance-focused, procurement-focused. But then I think it requires someone who has a good understanding, as you say, of innovation, who can think out of the box, who is a perfect stakeholder manager, can build trust, can build energy in the own organization and for the service offering of GBS. So a visionary, but paired with operational excellence, like that's that secret spot, I think, being strategic and visionary and being able to operate.
Because we often hear, for example, from the business that GBS does not understand the business and what is needed beyond, of course, the usual tactical set of activities. So how important, in your view, is also to make sure that there is full understanding from leadership, but also from the rest of the GBS organization of what is being done on enterprise level, what the priorities are, what the business is about. I mean, I heard many times also saying, well, rather than going to GBS, I better go outside. I can go and buy directly. I don't need GBS to be in between, because if I go outside and I leverage an ecosystem of vendors that have done many times before, they do have the capability. So how to help GBS, maybe that's also linked to the brand. How to help GBS being credible, how to help GBS showing they do understand the business, or how to accelerate actually even the process of understanding the business to be more credible, and so to do more.
You want to start? Let me start.
So I think one aspect is the operating model, as we discussed before. So how do we make sure that the operating models are kind of ingrained between GBS and the retained organization? Because then we have the same purpose and the same outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. That's number one. And then number two is really building the brand within the company, not separate. This is not a separate organization, but being that GBS brand within the company, and convincing with assets, with results, and with building those relationships, right, within the organization.
I think this whole thing about, GBS doesn't understand the business, I think that's just a lazy comment. I mean, because then what are they really doing to help GBS understand what their key priorities are? And it goes back to what we were talking about yesterday in terms of outcomes. The business needs to be clear, okay, well, what outcome am I looking for? I mean, GBS is going to track a lot of different things in terms of how they manage specific processes, but what outcome are we looking for? And if there's an alignment on that, then you can't say that one side doesn't really understand what the other is doing. So again, for me, it comes back to this collaborative aspect, and really looking at what is good for the company is also good for GBS. I mean, we're all in this together, so we need to look at what's the best outcome for the company.
Maybe a closing comment on the external brand of GBS. I mean, we discussed a lot about the importance of capabilities and to enable GBS to play that role of enabler and accelerator of digital transformation and solution innovation. When it comes to talent, you need to be very attractive as an employer. So how do you see then the GBS external brand playing an important role to be an attractive employer?
Yeah. Do you have a thought?
Yeah, so I think that comes back to the location strategy conversation that we had yesterday. So how are you branding yourself as a GBS organization within that organization? So what's your EVP, your employee value proposition? Where are you located, and how are you kind of articulating that culture of why it would be fun and great and rewarding to join that bunch of people, right? Like in simple terms. So it really comes back to the employee value proposition, in my view.
Have a very clear value proposition, and that will drive also the full location discussion to make sure that the right talents are available based on what you need.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. All right.